Welcome to Mom and Mind, a podcast about maternal mental health from conception to pregnancy and postpartum. Real stories from moms and family members who have made it from struggling to wellness, and interviews with experts and advocates who work for moms and families to get the help they need. We discuss very real struggles that can sometimes be hard to hear, but these are stories that need to be told so that moms and families can know that healing is possible. This podcast is meant to offer information and awareness and is not a replacement for treatment by a professional. Thank you for being with us today. Hi, and welcome back to Mom and Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. On today's episode, we're talking with Lindsay Lipton Gerszt, who shared her story about the difficulties she experienced after the birth of her son in a new documentary called When the Bough Breaks, a documentary about postpartum depression. I was able to see this documentary when it screened and can attest to the power and necessity of this film. If you've been listening to the podcast and hearing stories from other mothers, you may be seeing that pregnancy and postpartum mood changes happen to a lot of women. And hearing their stories, their experiences is so important so that we can really have a heartfelt understanding of moms during this time. I'm really honored to have Lindsay here to share her story with us. Lindsay was born and raised in Miami, Florida. In 1997, she graduated with a BA from the University of Miami, where she majored in communication and sociology. Because of her love of music and the arts, in 1997, she began her career in Los Angeles at Airwave Records. In 1999, she worked at MCA Records, and in 2003, she worked as a music manager at the firm. Lindsay had the pleasure of working with, managing, and doing PR for some of the biggest artists in the music industry. In 2007, she stepped back from the music industry to begin her beautiful family. It was at this stage in her life that she came face to face with postpartum depression. She has now committed herself to raising awareness for PPD, its many faces, and the path to a healthy life and family. Her commitment to PPD has included working on the important documentary When the Bough Breaks, a documentary about postpartum depression, as well as fundraising, producing and telling her story, along with helping other women to tell their story. This effort has become her passion. Welcome, Lindsay. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm really honored and excited to talk with you today. As I said in the intro, I was able to see the film when it screened and really see what went on for you and the powerful experience that you had and some of the healing that you had. So I'd love to start with that. What happened for you? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, first I'd like to say that I had a history of depression, OCD, and anxiety. All growing up, I think my OCD started when I was 6 years old. Mm-hmm. And when I got married, my husband asked me how many children I wanted, and I said, I want to have one and see how it goes. Yeah. Because I kind of knew that I was at risk for postpartum depression. I've heard about it before. I didn't know much about it, but I knew that I was a good candidate for it.
Okay.
So I had been on medication since I was a child, and I was studying on a medication called Zoloft since I was 19 years old. When I found out I was pregnant, I started seeing a new psychologist that specialized in pregnancy and postpartum depression. Oh. And she, knew I was stable on the medication and was watching me. Mm-hmm. However, when I got pregnant and was further along into my pregnancy, I started getting very, very anxious. And my OCD became out of control. And it was so bad to the point where I didn't want to have the baby. I was obsessing every second about the baby. Mm-hmm. If I didn't feel the baby move inside my stomach for a minute, I would eat a bunch of sugar. And then if I still didn't feel him move, then I would go to the hospital to get an emergency ultrasound. That's how bad my anxiety was. Wow. I would sit there and just obsess all day long. Yeah. So I pretty much knew that I was going to be in trouble. However, I, was hoping that being on medication and having a psychologist and psychiatrist watch me throughout my pregnancy, I'd be, at least I would know what to do once the baby arrived and if postpartum depression hit me.
Right. So in terms of some of the things that moms experience, you had some knowledge beforehand where a lot of moms don't. So you had the upper hand on that and you were being proactive, but it sounds like at that point that the experience was super intense.
Yeah, but I thought I knew more than I knew.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about postpartum depression besides you being depressed after you have the baby. I didn't know the different kinds and the different forms and what goes on in your head and the intrusive thoughts and all of that. So I was prepared in a way that I knew I could get depressed after I had the baby, but I didn't know the extent of that and,
Right.
the overwhelmingness of it after.
So what did happen towards the end of your pregnancy and then birth and after birth?
Yeah. So I was so anxious about the birth of my son that I decided to be induced. So I knew exactly when he was coming and I could prepare. My OBGYN knew that I had a history of depression and did not say this was a bad idea.
Mm.
So we scheduled me to be induced 2 days before my son was due. And they did a lot of Pitocin and a lot of epidural. And I think it was about 38 hours into being in the hospital and nothing happening and being on Pitocin and just crying and wondering why no one was just telling me to have a C-section.
Right.
That, finally he was ready to come out, and I had about 6 hours of painful pushing because he was stuck under my pubic bone.
Oh, man.
So they kept giving me pain medication because the epidural, they had to take off the epidural so I can feel myself pushing because I couldn't feel anything with the epidural.
Wow.
And so the pain medication stopped working after 10 minutes each time. So 6 hours of pain medication, basically. My son came out and he was just, drugged out of his mind. And, the experience from second one was a nightmare.
Wow. Wow. So, right. I mean, you're already feeling anxious and then you're in this environment. Was anybody coaching you through this, giving you any, helping you at all?
My mother and my husband were in the room, and I think my mom was anxious, so she was sewing. And my husband, was just kind of there for me and supportive and holding my hand. And I had this wonderful nurse there, and I wish I remember her name, that would come in and give me massages and be there for me. My doctor, however, was not present. And, I think I was more on her time and between her appointments of when this baby was actually going to come.
Oh,
and she ended up not delivering my baby.
Oh my gosh.
So with, an episiotomy and everything, he came out with the head doctor of the company, who was the only one that knew how to do the episiotomy and forceps. He also had to have forceps. And I opened my eyes to a room full of students.
Oh, okay. Med students.
Med students watching the forceps and the episiotomy, and someone's filming and it was just like this crazy experience. And I was drugged and my son was drugged. And as soon as he came out, they called Code Blue on him because he was so stoned out of his mind. They didn't know if he didn't cry. So, so I'm sitting there and I had no idea what was going on. And there goes the beginning of this craziness.
Wow. What a launch into such
motherhood.
Yeah, motherhood. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to further along, I was okay for the first 2 days in the hospital, and I was very tired, but they took Hunter, my son, to get some rest in the, what is it called?
In the NICU or?
Yeah. In the
nursery?
In the nursery. They took Hunter to go get some rest in the nursery while I could get rest. And then they would bring him in, and I was breastfeeding and I would give him love, and I was happy, and everyone was coming to visit, and it was busy. And then on the third day we went home and we were still excited, and my mom was there and my dad was there and my husband was there, and the Hunter was doing great and he was latching on and he was feeding. And the first night we didn't sleep. And the second day I was sitting on the couch holding him, and I was so tired, and something inside my brain literally shifted. And it was like a click. And I looked at my mom and I was just like, it's happened. I'm gone, Mom. I'm gone. I have postpartum depression. And from there, I lived in this nightmare.
Oh my gosh. So it came on for you really hard and very quickly.
Yeah.
And
as much as you can prepare for it, knowing with the history and knowing that I had the possibility of it, you can't prepare for that pain, the physical and mental pain of it. You just can't prepare for it. And it's this overwhelming just sadness that just takes over. And when you're in it, you don't know when it's going to end. You hear that you're going to come out of it and that, you can get better, but you're in it and it's so painful.
Right.
And you don't know when it's going to be over or when you're going to get better. And it's just every second is kind of like, a year.
So, you had sort of multiple factors that made this very intense with what you were experiencing during pregnancy, then the birth experience itself.
Yeah.
And then after the birth, what you just described, maybe some other factors too. I'm not sure. Our lives are so complicated that, if there certainly were other stressors at the time, but certainly you don't need to have anything other than what you experienced to feel terrible.
Right.
So what happened after you kind of had that feeling or that switch?
I wanted to get help right away. So I called my doctor and found out that the doctor I was seeing retired.
Oh, boy.
And so I had to rush to the person that was taking over for her. So I wasn't able to interview anybody or, so that was really hard because I was holding on to like the hope of, her helping me.
Right.
And so I ran over to this doctor. I got an emergency appointment and he said, obviously the medication you're taking stopped working, through the hormones and after you had the baby, and we're going to try another medication. And I remember him saying so clearly, if this doesn't work, don't worry, we have plenty of other options. And I'm looking at him and I said, I don't have time for plenty of other options.
Right.
There's not time for that. Every second hurts so bad. I won't make it for plenty of other options.
Mm-hmm.
And I left there feeling so just kind of, like beaten. Like it was just this nightmare. And so, I tried another medication and it didn't work. And every medication you have to give time for it to work. And so I would have the hope of like, the next day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel a little better. And I didn't. Mm-hmm. And then I believe, a few weeks later, I tried a different medication and it didn't work. And I'm sitting there and my family left to go back to Colorado. And my husband's at work and I'm sitting there alone with Hunter, and he was a sick baby. He cried nonstop. He couldn't eat. He had projectile vomit. And I'm sitting there and I was just like, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. And everything started becoming so surreal. And so like, I didn't know how to pick him up. I didn't know how to feed him. And, everything was just out of control. And, like I said before, every second was a year. And there I was. And just by myself with him. And we ended up hiring help. And I think that almost made it worse for me because I would see somebody else taking care of my baby. And I wasn't able to take care of my baby. And so finally, when Hunter was 6 weeks old, we started this Mommy and Me class at a place called a Mother's Haven. And everyone went around the room and said, what's going on with them and who they are and tell a little bit about themselves. And it got to me and I said, I just want you all to know that I have really bad postpartum depression and I'm going to do my best in this class, but I'm really suffering. And everyone kind of just opened up and was warm and loving, and we all became very close. But I left the class that day, and the woman that owns a Mother's Haven came up to me and she said, there was a mom here that was suffering from postpartum depression too. Do you want her number? And I said, yes. Mm-hmm. And I went home and I remember getting on the call with her, and it was so hard to even talk on the phone sometimes. Like I couldn't even function. I couldn't put a spoon to my mouth and not miss my mouth. It was just this overwhelming. It was so bad. So she told me about this doctor and said that, he helped her. So I made an appointment with that doctor and I went to him, and he is known to be a great PPD doctor and help people. However, he over-medicates. So I was on about 12 different medications at once at one point, I think. And so I felt myself getting a little better with the depression, but I felt like I was also going to have a drug overdose at any moment.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so anyways,
whoa.
That went on for a couple years. And so literally it was just me trying to do my best. And I had a doula, that helped at nights for a little bit. And I had a nanny that helped a little bit. And then when my son reached a certain age, I looked around and I said, I need to do this by myself. And I didn't care anymore that I was in so much pain. I just wanted to be with my son. And I had so much guilt about, the time I missed with him that I just wanted to do it by myself. And I think that's ultimately what helped me. was being hyper focused on him and getting out of the house with him and making sure I took care of him properly.
Mm.
You know.
And how far along did you say was this point for you? A couple years?
So I was on the heavy medication for probably 3 years, but I did get rid of all possible help at actually 4 months.
Oh, wow. That's very soon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So giving yourself kind of a mission on some level?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. And did you have the help of a therapist during this time?
I did. I had a therapist, and I found therapy so extremely hard to go to when you're in so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
It was so hard to sit there and be in the state of panic and anxiety and just literally wanting to die, and sitting there and having to talk about what's going on with me. But I forced myself to go, and I forced myself to go to the psychologist, I think the psychiatrist, once a week.
Uh-huh.
And I had a schedule, and I also did acupuncture, and I did chiropractor, and my life literally became taking care of my son, making sure he got better because he was sick, and going to my appointments.
Wow.
That was it.
I mean, I hear at some level, I don't know, exactly what kind of pain you felt. I mean, all that you went through and all that you're describing is you were incapacitated on some level for quite some time.
Yeah.
And then found this kind of thing to hold on to, your mission to both heal him and heal yourself. And while I maybe on this end of it, since I didn't experience it, what I hear is just this unrelenting survivor and capacity to fight. And you did.
Yeah, I did. And thank you for saying that. I mean, it literally is like fight or flight. You're sitting there and you can't imagine living one more second. And you're sitting there watching your son sick and going to all these appointments so he doesn't fall behind developmentally or anything. And you know what saved me, which is strange, is my OCD. Because at the end of the day, these are things I had in my head, things I had to do.
Right.
My OCD was telling me I had to do these things. And as painful as they were, I did them because I had to.
But like taking care of him and taking care of yourself and getting to appointments and stuff like that.
Yeah, I had to. And my brain was telling me I had to. And days that I had to stay in bed, I had my son to take care of. I didn't have any help. So I had to get up and take care of him. And, there were days where I was like, someone has to take me to a hospital. I'm not going to make it through today. And I would put literally one foot in front of the other and somehow get through the day.
Wow.
And looking back at it, I don't know how I did it.
Right. It's hard to know. I mean, you listed a couple of things that probably helped kind of push you along. But, unfortunately, as you know, the advocacy that you do now, that some moms don't make it. And it's heartbreaking. And there was something for you that you were able to hold on to help you kind of get through day to day.
Yeah.
Thankfully, and you're able to make it through.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm so, I wish I had a magic wand.
Me too.
It's just too bad that women have to suffer in this way.
It's really not fair.
Right.
It's not fair that we're giving this opportunity to have these beautiful babies, and then we have to suffer and then deal with the stigma and the guilt that goes along with it. And, it's very unfair. There's no words to describe the pain that goes along with it. And I really think that, by making this movie, it not only shed light, on the subject for me, but I think, we're hoping that it's going to help so many other women and to see that they're not alone and the stigma is out there, but you don't have to go along with that stigma.
No, right. Stigma is right. We're busting it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So for the documentary, at what point in your journey of healing did that story pick up? Because I think it seems like the documentary didn't show that first part of your story, like the pregnancy and birth. Yeah,
we showed a video. The movie starts with a video of me finding out I'm pregnant. And it just so happens, I spent days going through old videos and footage of, when my son was young and before he was born, and all the pictures. And I'm so glad we had that because literally you see in my eyes that I'm happy, but oh my God, like, here we go. Okay. I'm pregnant, you know, and I kind of zone off in the camera a little bit. And, you know, that starts the journey. And, you know, the film it just shows not only my journey and my path to recovery, but so many other women's journeys ranging from baby blues to postpartum psychosis.
Right.
And, you know, I'm just so glad we made this film. It's an honor. And I actually think the film ended up saving my life.
Yeah.
We started filming when my son was 2.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I got on as producer, and we started following my story when my son was 6.
Okay.
So it's been a long time in the making.
Right. A long time in the making. And you're so, I just love that I don't know what your process was about, like, you know, what you allowed in the film and not, but, you know, from an audience perspective and a therapist perspective, which, you know, I'm coming from, is that, you know, other women who see this or family members who see this see some very raw and vulnerable and difficult things.
Yeah.
But it's so important to see that, because this is the reality for a lot of women. And you described that there is a spectrum. Some women have more mild symptoms, and some women have very, very severe and life-threatening symptoms.
Yes. I didn't not show anything. I showed every part that I could, including probably the hardest part for me to show in the film was me getting the TMS treatment. You know, you see me with this machine on my head and zapping my brain, and that was just not fun to watch afterwards. And that was the most painful thing I went through.
Physically painful.
Physically painful and mentally painful. And, you know, I think by showing that, I was really worried about the stigma attached to that. And I had to get over it, because when it comes down to it, this film isn't just about me. It's about helping other women and showing the different treatment options. And
right. And for people who don't know, that TMS is transmagnetic stimulation. And it is one of the treatment options available, typically for if other treatment options haven't worked well or used in conjunction with other treatment. If there's symptoms that are unremitting. Right. You know, really, that type of stuff isn't necessarily talked about or shown. And it's from the outside, it seems like, oh, you know, that's for, I don't know, whatever. People use shorthand to have thoughts or ideas about other people's experience. And why I think it's so important for you to be sharing your story, and yours specifically, is because it was so intense for you, and you were so open in the film about showing your treatment options with medication and EMDR and the TMS and other things that you used. Is, you know, sometimes, unfortunately, we have to try multiple things to see what works. Yeah. But you are a story, and your experience is that you did get through, and you worked very hard to do it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for anybody that has a history of depression, you know, if you're a depressed person, you know, with a chemical imbalance, like for me, I'm never going to be good. You know, like I'm always going to be struggling with depression. It's the way it is. And I've learned to live with that. That's not the case for everybody. If you don't have a history of depression, and you're not, you know, you just get postpartum depression or a form of it, then you really have such an amazing chance of completely overcoming this and having this beautiful, wonderful life. That being said, I suffer from depression, OCD, and anxiety, and I see myself as having a beautiful life as well. Because I do, you know, I put one foot in front of the other, and I love my child, and I love my life now. And on the moments that I'm really struggling, I learn to kind of almost appreciate it and say, this is me, and I'm doing everything I need to do to be okay.
I love that. I mean, that like acceptance, self-acceptance, and is so powerful. And it's not like resigning. You're not saying, well, I'm going to feel like this forever, and this is just how it is. You're saying this is part of who you are, and it sounds like working very actively to, you know, find ways to still feel connected to your life.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, it goes in steps. For so long, I couldn't imagine exercising. I was like, there's no way. Like, I want to drop my son off at school, come home, take a nap, lie around, and get through the day and pick him up and, you know, like just get through the day. And then last year, my son's 8 years old. And just last year, I was like, you know what? I'm ready to go exercise now. And I now exercise every day. And it's been really helpful. And I push myself. And, you know, so like everything doesn't have to happen all at once. You know, you do it in steps, and you do what you need to do for you.
Right.
what's right for you. And it's okay to have a bad day and go home and nap for a few hours. Take that time for yourself.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, this is, so important for moms to hear, because this is the stuff that in our own minds when we're struggling, it's like, guilt, shame, shame.
You feel like a failure.
Right. Yeah. So I like having these conversations and, having people eavesdrop in on this to hear that all of the possibilities, and there's so many different ways to be human, and nobody has it just perfect and everything's fantastic all the time. And then there are some, also it's on a spectrum. There are people who deal with stuff every day and who find ways to cope and manage. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah. And I want to note that people, we live in a Facebook society and nobody posts the pictures of them having a bad moment or when they look bad or their kid is having a meltdown or their kid's throwing up or they're depressed that day or they're fighting with their husband. You could be divorcing your husband and someone will post on Facebook, "Happy birthday to my wonderful husband."
Right.
It's just like the Facebook world doesn't exist. And so I really have learned that, please, it's not real. There's no perfect person. There's no perfect family. There's no perfect child.
Right.
It's okay. We're all struggling and we're all trying to get through it.
Yes. Thank you. That's such an important message.
And I think for anybody, not just those who are struggling with anything, it's a very unreal world.
It is. I think because, the documentary itself, your story is featured in there. There are a lot of other people, including the celebrities who are in the film and talk about their experience. And I think, speaking to this like social media culture and maybe even on some level, just like the feeling we have about celebrities and whatnot, to be able to see people that we see sort of every day, on film or TV or whatever, talking about very, very real stuff.
Yeah.
So a little bit about the film. There's a couple of celebrities on there, and it's narrated by Brooke Shields.
It's narrated and executive produced by Brooke Shields. Yeah. She is the pioneer of getting postpartum depression out into the public. So we're completely honored that she's a part of this film. Yeah,
it's really awesome. In terms of celebrity, I feel like in my day and age anyway, she was one of the first celebrities to really talk about it publicly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, and then Carnie Wilson, who is probably one of the sweetest women I've ever met in my whole life. She is so kind and she will do anything. And she believes in this film so much that she will just do anything to get the word out and spread awareness and share her story. And actually in the film, she shared information about her experience that she's never shared before in articles or anything. And then Artie's Cara, who's a celebrity chef, who is just the sweetest little thing. She's beautiful and bubbly and wonderful and just, so just every time I see her, she just puts a big smile on my face. And in the film, she really connects, she's just kind of like, she has a smile on her face while she's telling her story. And she's just like, when she explains like the moment that she started feeling better, you're just like smiling with her. And,
So powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. Those are just a couple of the people who are in the film. There are lots of other people, some women who are very known in the maternal mental health world.
Yeah.
But anyhow, there are a lot of stories in here, and I think that speak to a lot of different women's experience.
Yeah, and I also hope, we focus a lot on postpartum psychosis because that's another area that there's, so much stigma about. People think that they don't want to share their story because they don't want to be seen as one of those women on the news that committed infanticide or suicide, and we want to put the human being to the psychosis stories.
Yes.
And that was such a big part of it. And, Naomi Knowles is in our film, and she was a very, very dear friend of mine. And her story is so powerful. And before I met her, I could never imagine being friends with somebody that went through what she went through.
Yeah.
And as I got to know her, I fell so in love with her and saw her as, this wonderful person that was sick at the time. It really, like I said, it puts the human being to the story. And I really hope that, people can learn from her story and the other, psychosis stories in the film, as tragic as they are,
Yes. Yeah. I mean, these experiences have to be told. And it's so hard to lose another mom to these illnesses. And I'm just so thankful that you guys are putting this film out to give another voice, and a big voice in a big way, so that, hopefully we can, with this film and with the work that other people are doing in all these other organizations, really, to prevent a loss of another mom, prevent the death of another mom.
Let me tell you, if we can prevent one more death, then we did our job.
Yeah.
It's so tragic. When I look at the news, some mornings when you wake up and you get a news story and you're just like, how, like, we have to, my partner and I, Jamie Lynn, we say we have to get this film out tomorrow. Like we can't wait any longer. We have to get this out. We have to, help save lives. And, it's time for us to just kind of like, let's educate, let's get this out there.
Because this is, with the proper treatment and proper support and monitoring, all of this is manageable and or preventable on some level. Like, moms do not have to be suffering. We can, as a society and a community, treat moms with more and give them more support and with more respect to the transition into motherhood and families and all that stuff. So it feels like we both have the same soapbox. So
exactly.
And passion, really. But so I want to direct people to the Facebook page for the film, When the Bough Breaks film Facebook page.
Yes.
The trailer for the film can also be found on YouTube, When the Bough Breaks.
I also want to mention that there are other pages for When the Bough Breaks. So it's When the Bough Breaks, a documentary about postpartum depression, when you type it into Facebook.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, we're 2016 right now. It just so happens that there's another film out that is also called When the Bough Breaks. And that is it's not about postpartum depression.
It's a horror film.
Yeah. So when you guys are looking to find information on When the Bough Breaks, make sure to put in there a documentary about postpartum depression. They're two very different films. But I really want to direct people to that, and then suing on that on your website, whenthebowbreaksfilm.com. You guys will be putting up release dates and where people can find the showings for the film.
Yes. A couple of things. We post on Facebook often. We post other people's stories. We post news articles. We give updates on the film. We also, on the website for whenthebowbreaksfilm.com, we ask for people to sign up to get updates on the film. You put in your email address, and as soon as we get updates, we will send you the information, and we should have information very, very soon on its release.
Right. And I will personally suggest that anybody who works with mothers during pregnancy or postpartum on any capacity, could be a therapist, OB, pediatrician, nurses, doulas, midwives, anyone who comes into contact and has helped as part of the treatment team for a mom, please watch this film.
I mean, and dads and grandmothers and cousins and best friends. And, it's really for everybody, because you never know who you're going to come in contact with that you can help.
Right. And just, as documentaries can be, some of the stuff that's in the film is very difficult and hard. But that's why we need to be aware of it, because I think when things are difficult and hard, we tend to shy away, which, it's a natural response to want to protect yourself from things that feel difficult. Like, absolutely. If you're a mom who is in the throes of dealing with this and you would feel too sensitive to watch this film, fine, don't watch it right now. But, just know that this resource is here. And that's how I view it. It's a resource for knowledge and for spreading the word about stuff that we should.
Right. And that being said, if you're struggling, maybe have your husband or friends or family watch the film so they can help.
Right. Yeah. And if any of you who are listening today are struggling or worried or concerned that you yourself or a family member might be dealing with something, there are lots of resources. I'll direct you to PSI, which is postpartum.net, to get connected with a therapist in your community or resources in your community. There is help, and there are a lot of great and warm and supporting people in the PSI warm line who will help you through. Postpartum Progress is another good avenue for support. Or just typing into Google postpartum depression support or therapist to find something that's local to you. But PSI is a good resource to get connected to get information and to be connected to support.
Yeah, and PSI, Postpartum Support International, has a warm line that you can call, leave a message, and volunteer will call you back and help you with any questions you have. They can help you find a support group in your area, help you find a doctor in your area, and just kind of talk you through what you're going through.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming on and sharing your story and being such an awesome advocate and, being willing to put yourself out there to help so many people.
Thank you so much. And I just want to add one more thing is that, like, if you're struggling, I promise you are not alone. You're not the only person that's gone through this. It's painful right now, but you will be okay. You just have to keep going, put one foot in front of the other, and I promise it will get better. Just keep going.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that.
Do it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
By joining us today and listening, you're a part of the growing community of people who are aware and concerned for mothers and families during this beautiful and sometimes very difficult time of life. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this free podcast so that Mom and Mind can be found by moms, families, and providers who will benefit from hearing our talks. If you or someone you know is having a hard time, help is available. Please look for resources for help at momandmind.com, where you will also find links and information from today's episode. Thank you for listening and being a part of the Mom and Mind community.